Have you ever wondered how close you've come to danger without even realizing it? At Shivering Vault, we take you there, one story at a time. But before you drift off, consider liking this video, commenting where you're watching from and at what time, and subscribing to keep these chilling stories coming. Now, let's dive into these unsettling tales. I'm 16 years old, live in a suburban area just outside of Columbus, Ohio. Pretty quiet neighborhood, decent area, not really the kind of place where crazy stuff happens. Just lots of split-level homes, trimmed lawns, retirees walking their dogs, that kind of thing. My parents had to go out of state for a wedding that weekend, my dad's cousin or something. I didn't want to go, obviously. I hate those long family trips, especially ones where I don't really know anyone. Plus, I had a bunch of homework and a physics quiz to study for, so I convinced them to let me stay behind. First time I'd ever been left alone overnight like that. My mom was a little hesitant, but my dad said I'd be fine. They left early Friday morning and were coming back Sunday night. At first, it was awesome. Like, that Friday was just perfect. I had the whole house to myself. No one nagging me, no one telling me to take the trash out. I stayed in my pajamas all day, played Xbox in the living room with the volume way up, ordered a disgusting amount of pizza and Mountain Dew. Just pure teenage freedom. By the time Saturday rolled around, I was still riding that high. Slept in late, binged some Netflix, scrolled on Reddit, the usual. I didn't even notice how quiet the house was until it started getting dark. During the day, being alone just feels relaxing. But at night, especially in a house that's usually full of noise, it starts to feel different. Still, I didn't think much of it. I had homework to get through, so I made myself sit down and knock that out. Took me longer than I expected, and I finally finished around midnight. I brushed my teeth, threw on a hoodie, and went up to my room. Passed out as soon as my head hit the pillow. Then, at 2:13 a.m., I woke up. I remember the exact time because I looked at my phone right away. I felt super thirsty, like I hadn't had water in days. My throat was dry and scratchy, and I was kind of hot for some reason. I figured I'd just get a glass of water from the kitchen and head right back to bed. The house was dead silent. Not even the creaking sounds you usually hear when everything settles. I padded downstairs in my socks, trying not to stub my toe, and made my way into the kitchen. The fridge light kind of burned my eyes when I opened it, but I grabbed a water bottle and chugged it right there, leaning against the counter. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I remember that weird jolt in my chest. I wasn't expecting anything at that hour. I figured maybe it was just a spam text or something. But when I looked at the screen, my heart literally skipped a beat. It was a message from my mom. The text just said, "The neighbor just sent us this. Do not panic. Stay upstairs." Underneath that was an image. I tapped on it. It took a second to load. The photo was kind of grainy and a little blurry, like it had been zoomed in from a distance. But you could clearly see our house in the background. And in the foreground, standing just on the edge of our front lawn near the driveway, was a man. Tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. His head was angled down slightly, so the shadows hid his face. But he was facing the house, staring directly at it. My first thought was that it was some stupid prank, like someone in the neighborhood screwing around, or maybe a friend of mine trying to scare me. But then I realized I hadn't told anyone I was home alone that weekend. Not one person. And before I could even process what was happening, I heard it. Glass breaking. Somewhere downstairs. Loud, sharp, like a window had just shattered. I froze. My stomach felt like it turned inside out. I immediately turned off the kitchen light, even though it was probably too late for that to matter. I didn't know what else to do. I just bolted back upstairs, skipping steps, nearly tripping over myself. I ran into my room, locked the door, and got into my closet. It's small and cramped and smells like old shoes, but it's the only place I could think of where I might not be seen right away. I sat there in the dark, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline. I texted my mom back, fingers trembling. "There's someone in the house. I heard glass break. I'm in my closet." She replied almost instantly, "Stay quiet. Police are on the way. Don't move. Don't make a sound." I turned the sound off on my phone and held it to my chest. My ears were straining to hear anything over the sound of my own heartbeat. And then I heard it. Footsteps, creaking across the hardwood floors downstairs. The kind of footsteps where you can just tell the person is being careful, like they're listening as they move. I heard a door open downstairs, then a drawer, then something metal being dragged. Every sound felt like it lasted forever. I could feel the sweat dripping down the back of my neck. My legs were cramping up in the closet, but I couldn't move. Then I heard the stairs. They creaked louder than anything else. One by one. Slow, methodical. I was staring at the crack of light under my closet door, barely able to breathe, and I swear I saw the shadow of feet pass by. He stopped just outside my room. I couldn't hear anything for a second. I thought maybe he'd moved on, but then my doorknob rattled. He tried the door. It was locked. Then, silence. No footsteps. Just dead quiet. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15. Felt like hours. Then, just when I thought I might have hallucinated the whole thing, I heard the back door slam. And maybe a minute later, sirens. I started sobbing. I stayed in the closet until I heard the police yelling. When I finally came out, the red and blue lights were flashing through every window. The cops did a full sweep of the house. They found the broken window in the laundry room, muddy boot prints across the tile, a rusted crowbar on the floor near the back door. But the guy was gone, slipped into the woods behind our house before they could get there. They never caught him. When my parents got home the next morning, my mom couldn't stop hugging me. My dad kept pacing and looking out the window. We ended up staying with my grandparents for a few days after that. I haven't slept right since. When I was younger, I lived with my mom in a small house. During my middle and high school years, she worked overnight shifts, which meant I was usually home alone from 8 p.m. until 4 a.m. This particular incident happened just a few months before I graduated high school. One night around 7:30, I said goodbye to my mom like usual. After she left, I spent a few hours playing video games. It was a school night, so I wasn't supposed to stay up too late, but I ended up pushing my bedtime anyway. At around 11:30, I turned everything off and went upstairs to bed, but I spent another hour scrolling on my phone before finally falling asleep. I woke up suddenly to the sound of a door closing downstairs. I glanced at the clock. It was 3:30 a.m. Assuming my mom had gotten home early, I rolled over, trying to fall back asleep as I listened to footsteps moving around below. After a minute, though, something felt off. Normally, my mom would head straight upstairs to get ready for bed, but these footsteps weren't coming up. They were just wandering. I kept listening, and after a couple of minutes, I realized the person downstairs wasn't pausing in any rooms. They were slowly walking through the house as if inspecting every corner. A sense of unease started to creep in. I switched on my bedroom light, and almost immediately the footsteps stopped. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. Carefully, I opened it and stepped into the hallway. I expected to see light from downstairs, but the house was completely dark. Whoever had been moving around hadn't turned on any lights, which somehow made the situation even more unsettling. I crept quietly to the top of the stairs and peered through the railing into the living room. There was no one there. Even in the dim light, I could see everything was in place. My PlayStation was still sitting where I left it, which reassured me for a second. I figured if someone had broken in to steal, they would have grabbed the most valuable thing in plain sight. Still, I needed to know for sure. I slowly walked down the stairs and called out softly, "Mom, you home?" No answer. The house remained eerily still. I made my way through the hallway and into the kitchen. That's when I saw it, a shoe print on the tile. I lifted my eyes, and across the room, sitting silently at the dining table, was a man wearing a black mask. His clothes were all dark, making his figure hard to fully make out. He just stared at me, completely motionless, his expression blank and cold. I bolted upstairs, slammed my bedroom door, locked it, and immediately called 911. The operator stayed on the line, giving me updates as police were dispatched. About a minute later, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps moving across the downstairs floor toward the base of the stairs. I whispered frantically to the operator, heart pounding, until I finally heard the front door open and the footsteps fade away. Less than 30 seconds after that, headlights swept across my window. My mom had just pulled into the driveway. I ran outside to meet her and explain everything in a panic. The police arrived soon after and conducted a thorough search, but they didn't find anything useful. From what they could tell, the man wasn't there to steal, and he didn't make any attempt to come after me. The most chilling thought is that he may have been waiting for my mom. It made sense. He broke in just minutes before she was usually home. I still think about that night often. What if I hadn't gone downstairs? What if she had walked in a minute earlier, completely unaware that someone was already inside waiting? It was a Saturday night around 11:30 p.m. I'd been sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone and trying to decide if I should cook something or just order takeout. Honestly, I didn't feel like cooking, so I pulled up the delivery app and ordered a burger. Nothing special, just a regular double bacon burger and cheeseburger and some curly fries from a local place that was open late. I figured it'd take about 30 minutes for it to get here, but about 25 minutes later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I got up, checked the app. Sure enough, it said, "Your driver has arrived." I grabbed my wallet, opened the door, and went outside. When I saw the delivery guy, something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it at first. He was wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap, nothing weird about that. But he didn't immediately hand me the food. He kind of just stood there, holding the bag like he was waiting for something. Then he said, "Big house you got here, huh?" I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was just making small talk, right? So I just nodded and said, "Yeah, it's okay." Then he asked, "So is it just you tonight?" And I thought, that's kind of a weird question, but I didn't really know how to respond. It made me a little uncomfortable, but I just shrugged and lied. "Yeah, my boyfriend's upstairs," which wasn't true. I don't even have a boyfriend, but I just didn't want to say anything else. I grabbed the food and shut the door quickly, locking it right after. For a second, I stood there, staring at the door. I don't know why, but I felt weird about it. Maybe it was nothing, but the whole situation felt a little off. I peeked out the window to see if his car was leaving, and it wasn't moving right away. He was just sitting there, looking at the house. I watched for a minute, and then, finally, he drove off. I didn't think much of it after that, but I also didn't feel like eating. So I put the food on the kitchen counter and went back to the couch. I turned on the TV, but wasn't really paying attention. My dog, Murphy, just laid there on the floor like he usually does. Then, about an hour later, I heard a sound outside. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it again, this kind of metallic rattling. It was coming from the back gate. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I heard the sound again, and it sounded like someone was messing with the latch. I froze. Maybe it was the wind, or maybe not. I grabbed my phone, opened it, and dialed 911. My heart started racing, but I whispered into the phone, telling the operator that I thought someone was outside messing with the gate. I went over to the kitchen window and peeked through the blinds, trying not to make a sound. The backyard was dark, but I saw someone moving along the fence. I didn't know who it was, but I could tell it was a person. My stomach dropped. I stayed still and whispered to the 911 operator, saying I saw someone outside. The operator told me to stay quiet and to stay inside, so I backed away from the window and went to the stairs. Murphy was right behind me, growling a little, which was unusual for him. He's normally pretty chill, but he wasn't having it. I kept the phone in my hand, just waiting. Then I saw him, the delivery driver. I could see his hoodie clearly now. I thought for a second maybe it was just a coincidence, but then I saw the second person, someone standing just behind him. I didn't recognize the other guy, but I saw enough to know I didn't want to find out who he was. The delivery guy and the other guy started messing with the gate again, pulling on the latch, trying to get in. I felt my heart race. And the operator on the phone was still talking, asking me if I could lock myself in a room, but I wasn't going to move. I was too scared to even breathe too loudly. And then I heard sirens, faint at first, but getting closer. The figures at the gate froze and quickly ran off toward the side of the yard. I didn't hear anything else for a few moments. I waited in silence. Then, about 5 minutes later, I heard a knock at the door. It was the police. I opened it, and they told me they'd caught the two men a block down, running. The officers asked if I recognized either of them. I told them about the delivery driver, and they said that guy had been scoping out homes on his deliveries for a while. He'd been targeting houses that looked empty or were easy to break into. I didn't know what to say. They said they'd been watching him for a bit. Apparently, the other guy was his partner, and together they'd been doing this for a few months. They were catching houses late at night when people were home alone. They told me that if I hadn't noticed them tonight, my house would have been next on the list. They were already trying to get in. I never even considered that I could be at risk like that. For the past few years, I've been juggling 2 jobs. Most mornings, I leave my house around 6 and I don't get back until around 10 at night. Then I sleep, and the whole cycle repeats itself the next day. Unfortunately, that's just been my reality for a while. This happened a couple of months ago. One night, I came home and followed my usual routine. I showered and started getting ready for bed. While I was in the shower, though, I heard a noise, something that sounded like movement right outside the bathroom door. I quickly turned the water off, stepped out, and checked, but saw nothing. I figured it was probably the house settling or just some random creak. I finished up and went to bed. Throughout the night, I kept hearing strange noises around the house. It mostly sounded like creaking, similar to the way a house might shift during strong winds, but there was no wind that night and no real reason for those sounds. At one point, I even got up and walked through the house, trying to find the source. I found nothing. The next morning, I was exhausted and had to push through the day on nothing but coffee. By the time I got home that night, I was completely drained and ready for a solid night's rest. I went straight upstairs, turned on the shower, and before I even stepped in, I heard the noise again. This time, it was clearer. Something was right outside the bathroom door. It sounded like it moved past the doorway and into the bedroom. As unlikely as it seemed, it really felt like something had crossed the room. Even though I was uneasy, I knew I had to check. When I finally worked up the courage, I found nothing. I searched the house room by room, but everything seemed normal. I convinced myself it must have been something within the walls or under the floorboards. I showered, got into bed, and fell asleep just before midnight. I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night with that uneasy feeling that something was off. It was completely dark, and the house was silent. I didn't know what had woken me, but I was certain it was connected to the noises from before. I looked toward the door and saw the faintest movement of a shadow under the crack. My heart started pounding as I watched the shadow shift away from the door. Then I heard footsteps moving down the hallway. I froze, terrified, but a rush of adrenaline pushed me out of bed. I threw open the door, and at the far end of the hallway stood the dark silhouette of a man. His eyes were the only thing I could clearly make out. They seemed full of anger and restless energy. I slammed my door shut and locked it. I heard him moving down the stairs, and about 30 seconds later, the sound of the front door closing. The police arrived as quickly as they could, but there wasn't much they could do. They found signs suggesting the man had been inside the house for at least a few days, but beyond that, they didn't uncover much. I still have no idea where he was hiding. I sometimes think about those nights when I'd hear movement outside the bathroom door. Maybe he had been sleeping in my room, then quickly hiding in the closet when I got home, slipping out while I was in the shower. I also can't stop wondering why he lingered downstairs after I saw him, when he must have known I'd call the police. At this point, everything is just guesswork. But knowing that a stranger was secretly living in my house while I slept is a terrifying thought. As far as I know, he hasn't returned, and the police still haven't identified him. I never thought much of being home alone. I mean, I was used to it. My older brother Matt had a nice house in the suburbs of Texas, and sometimes when he was away for work, I'd stay over to keep the place from feeling too empty. This was one of those weekends. He was out on a business trip, and I was just finishing a long week of work myself. Nothing special, just a quiet Friday evening. The kind of evening where you order takeout, maybe watch something on Netflix, and just relax. It was around 10:30 p.m. when it happened. I was on the couch scrolling through my phone when I heard it. A knock at the door. I didn't really get visitors at this hour. I glanced through the peephole, but all I could make out was a shadowy figure, probably in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. His hair was a mess, and he looked a little disheveled. "Can I help you?" I asked through the door, trying to sound calm. The man cleared his throat and then spoke. "Hey, I'm Jason, a friend of Matt's. I need to come in for a minute." His voice was a little gruff. I took a step back and reached for my phone. I was going to call Matt just to check, but of course he didn't pick up. I left a quick message, something like, "Hey, some guy's at the door claiming to be your friend. His name's Jason." I hit send and tried to shake off the creeping feeling crawling up my spine. The man outside didn't seem to notice the hesitation. He knocked again, this time harder. "Hey, come on, open up. It's cold out here." I felt a little bit of panic rise in my chest. I didn't know what to do. I'd been alone at this house plenty of times before, but it was different tonight. Something about the man's face, the way he was standing there, and the way his voice started to get a little more insistent was starting to unsettle me. "Matt said you'd be here. Let me in," he said, his voice shifting from casual to a bit more demanding. I wasn't sure what to do. I glanced at my phone again, no response from Matt. The man was still standing there, his face now just inches from the glass of the door, his eyes peering into the dimly lit room. I backed away, trying to calm myself down, but the anxiety was slowly building. I texted Matt again, just in case he missed the first one. "Seriously, who is this guy?" Before I could think about what to do next, Matt finally replied, "I don't know anyone by that name." My heart dropped. I glanced through the peephole again, and this time the man's face was right there, like he was waiting for me to open the door. His eyes were wide, almost too wide, and the expression on his face was almost like he was getting frustrated. I panicked. Without thinking, I turned around and locked the door. The sound of the deadbolt clicking into place echoed in the stillness of the house. I didn't feel safe anymore. The man didn't leave. Instead of walking away, he stood there, just outside the door. I could hear his boots on the porch as he paced back and forth. I grabbed my phone and called 911, whispering into the receiver. 911, what's your emergency?" the operator asked. "There's a guy outside my door," I whispered. "He says he knows my brother, but I don't recognize him, and he won't leave." The operator told me to stay calm, that they'd send someone over right away. I barely heard the rest of what she said because my attention was focused on the man outside. I could hear him now, walking around the side of the house, his footsteps heavy on the gravel driveway. The sound of his boots crunching underfoot seemed louder than anything else. Then came the faintest sound of him trying the back door. He jiggled the handle a few times like he was testing it before moving to the next window, peering inside. I held my breath, pressing my back to the wall, trying to stay out of sight. My fingers tightened around my phone, almost crushing it. I heard him again, this time at the front window. I couldn't do anything but wait. I didn't know what else to do. I kept telling myself that the police were on their way, but with every second that passed, it felt like the walls of the house were closing in on me. The man didn't stop. He circled the house, testing every door, every window, looking for a way in. After what felt like forever, I heard him stop. He just turned and walked away. No noise, just the faint sound of his boots fading into the night. For a few moments, I didn't move. I stayed hidden in the living room, clutching my phone and staring out the window, but the man never came back. It wasn't until the police arrived that I felt safe enough to open the door. They asked me a few questions, took down my statement, and told me that the man was probably trying to gain access under false pretenses. I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been watching me long before that night, waiting for the right moment to make his move. That's it for today's tale from Shivering Vault. If you have a story worth sharing, drop it in the comments or send it our way. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your fellow thrill seekers. As always, the Shivering Vault thanks you for unlocking today's tale. Until next time, the Vault awaits your return.